I spent all of my money on my unemployed lover while he pursued his goals. After a year and $25,000 had gone, he informed me I was using him, and I eventually ended our relationship. In July 2014, my boyfriend and I started dating. He always finds the bright side of things, and has had a relatively happy childhood being the only child of divorced parents. We each had our own place to live and employment that covered all of our expenses and more. He purchased a flashy sports vehicle, a gaming computer, and a breed dog, which will be useful later. He attended school. After I graduated from high school and began working as an adult, during the first 6 months, I had a great deal of enjoyment. BF was dismissed wrongfully during the first week of January 2015. His new employer was anxious to replace everyone on his shift with buddies, so cleaning didn't begin until after the holidays, when everyone was less busy. BF's unemployment claim was approved by the government, and he began receiving benefits. He decided not to seek for a job and instead concentrated on finishing school. Here is where the fracture started. That May he was supposed to complete, but he failed a class and was unable to. He had to return to school during the summer. In June, his money ran out, forcing him to choose between paying rent and paying for his car and insurance. It was the final month of his lease, so I agreed to pay it. He may move in with me in July, completing school. A few weeks before graduation, he found out that he needed to take one more class to graduate. He also had to attend school that fall. I told him he needed to acquire a job to help pay the expenses, since I wouldn't be able to keep him awake for long. Okay, for a month or two. 6 months? Not at all. At the end of July, he was hired as an insurance representative for a well-known corporation. What a surprise. This employment pays on a commission basis. He was intrigued by what the boss stated about being able to earn as much money as he desired. I paid for the examinations he required to secure a job, after which he began selling structured financial products in an attempt to expand a client base. He made and continues to make nothing. He'll earn $700 for a little closure, followed by months of nothing. He works hard every day. But it's quite difficult to get financial clients from beginning when you don't have any family ties or networks in place. We relocated from my nice flat in the city center to a posh mansion on the outskirts of the slums in September 2015. It became out that I had to pay the security deposit. Rent was doubled at both locations for a month, totaling almost $3,500. By November, I had nearly depleted all of my funds, so I had to sell some shares in my family trust and pay a fee because my grandpa didn't want us to utilize it until we were 25. This helped us get by. By the end, I had just $300 saved and nothing left in my family account. Since July, I'd spent around $17,000 to assist us. His profession earned him enough to take customers, his dog, and my dog out for lunch and coffee. It has been. Since September, we've been fighting over money and housework. As a means of repaying me, I expected him to perform 90% of the cleaning. On each front, he remained unchanged. He kept saying me the same things his employer had taught him to attract my attention. Things will improve. At first, everyone is in difficulty. Hold on, you'll get through it. We'll be rolling in it as soon as I can create it. Each time we battled. Every time. We had this fight again twice, weeks before Christmas. I urged him to stop giving me bogus inspiring quotes. I yelled as I left the home and drove to acquire some smokes. I was irritated because I couldn't pick who to phone and invite to stay the night. I'm not going to sleep on someone else's couch while he stays in my house, eats my food, and sleeps in my bed. I returned home and gave him 10 days to gather his belongings and depart. He moved home with his father, and I spent Christmas morning returning his gifts online as I sat out with my dog. He seemed to have a nice time. When we met again in January of this year, he was focused on his company, so he could consider acquiring an apartment. I told him he could move back in, but he had to start working and sticking to my budget straight immediately if we couldn't divide the bills evenly at first. Everything was good at first, but by April, he wasn't working, so I had to pay for all of his and his dog's living expenses again. In addition, he was going to fail his quarterly target and requested that I adhere to a policy. He then instructed me to terminate it at the end of the quarter so that he could refund me. I became angry at him, since I work in the capital. I cannot afford to steal money for him. I told him I had already sacrificed a lot for him, and that he could not now try to take away my honor. Furthermore, the guy he hired to handle the reversed policy has yet to be paid back. 5 months later, we had another major disagreement, and he really stepped up with the tasks, which have continued to this day. Nevertheless, he did not have much money. Every month, his expensive automobile spent it all. In May, he received a large case. He paid half of his rent for the first time in June, and then promised to pay the entire amount in July. It was the second week of July, and he was broke again. He notified me at the last minute that he couldn't pay the rent in August. I had to hustle to pay the check using the money I had in one account. Furthermore, he couldn't pay for his portion of the food as he promised. Thus there was a mess. I am fed up with this. For my age, I have a wonderful job, paid off my whole college debt 8 months after graduation, and own my own car. But I still live money to paycheck to support him. He never pays his portion, even when there is a solid explanation. An entire year has passed with no change. People with a lot of money and a trust fund should be given this position. They may be broke while establishing their business. I admire how upbeat he is. Yet he's not in agony because I listen to him. I've let him get away with it too. Much for too long. And after our most recent disagreement over money, I recognized he is too young for this position. He gets upset when clients don't buy an insurance from him and instead spend their money on toys, vehicles, and vacations. When he got a stable job, he spent all of his money on a vehicle and a gaming computer. He doesn't mind having frequent, needless arguments with me, but he won't go to his parents for aid because I don't want to lose his father's respect. It saddens him that I don't believe him because he hasn't kept many promises. From his due dates to his jobs and graduation date, he isn't mature enough to grasp the larger picture, and since I've been too gentle on him, he has never. He had to since he didn't have to worry about what may happen. They struck me. I informed him that I was not going to renew the lease and would be departing on my own. He pleaded and questioned me as he followed me around the home. How are you feeling about me? What about us? Where am I going? Could you please let me join you? I have addressed all of your inquiries. Single, fight. He needs to respond to these inquiries since it is his life. I assured them I would not respond again and went to bed. That idiotic Marilyn Monroe comment about not valuing people at their best if you can't manage them at their worst. He spoke as he stood at the doorway. I informed him that it is possible to walk while feeling this way. That night, he shut himself inside the computer room and slept on the couch. After everything I've done, I can't believe he thinks I'm abandoning him. When he attempts to pay his portion of the rent and expenses by grumbling about how difficult things are, he has no idea how upsetting it is. It irritates me so much, and I've told him this every time we argue. Even though we quarrel all the time, it appears like he isn't paying attention to me. Why would he do this? I have not earned his respect by being his monetary slave and not setting boundaries for myself. He uses me as a safety net, which I feel horrible right now. He knows I will not let him or his dog go hungry, so he does not try to obtain money for food. This man's positivism drives him to breach every promise he makes to me. He claims that a consumer will buy a costly plan but then switch to a cheaper one, leaving him unable to pay his rent. He discusses a networking event where he met several individuals, but only 3 call back, and he needs money to get them out. He claims he was scheduled to make 40% on a business agreement, but only received 11%, leaving him unable to pay for groceries this week. He used to lie to me, but now I realize he is just lying to himself. He hasn't matured or based his expectations on reality since I've obstructed his progress. So I don't trust him to give me a firm date for when I'll have to quit assisting him, since I know he'll be incorrect about that too. He's beginning to stress out now that I'm no longer his atlas holding his universe together. I detest it so much that he didn't take me seriously until I whacked him with the hammer, which he should have done right away. I find the humor in the fact that he's a broke financial planner. I missed the first 6 months into our relationship. He had an excellent job that paid well enough to mask his lack of financial skills. Instead of becoming his mother and always caring for him, I might have taught him some lessons that could have stuck. When we ate supper together, watched football, or went to the movies, I missed him. I missed a pal I had with him a month after we met, where I knew I was going to marry him. I'm not sure right now. I am sad because I adore him. It is no longer an inner flame, but a strong link. That man is still there, hiding behind all this garbage. Perhaps this is simply my fatal hope talking. To learn his lesson, he just has to mature and take risks on his own. I want the person I met back so desperately that I can't express it. It makes me tear to write this. He stated he only needed a few more months to make it and feel safe, so I decided to let him move back in this year. And I desperately wanted it for him, so that we could enjoy life together again. My hope is holding me back in the same way that it is holding him back. Can our relationship endure now that I'm taking serious efforts to keep it from ruining my finances? Is it stupid of me to believe that anything can change? Would he live with his father and ask him to be his new helper? How could he not understand? How do I feel if I'm doing nothing wrong? Where has the original poster replied, user 1? You couldn't have, however. People must be eager to learn in order for new information to stick. I understand why it's difficult for you to leave him. His abilities and defects are so intimately intertwined. If you continue, you will be making the same error. He is doubling down on a terrible decision because you believe you can solve it with more time and effort. You and he both cannot. leave immediately rather than succumbing to the sunk cost fallacy. Wow. This is really true. Since I grew up in a violent household, he was a great source of hope for me when I met him. I can feel it scorching right now. I do the same error you mentioned. I realize what I should do. It will be terrible to do, however. At least to myself, I am worth it. Person 2, there is no hope. You are the only one capable of changing. He is the only person who can alter. He is not changing, rather he is adding even more weight. Based on an unsuccessful previous theory. Why doesn't he get another job? You know what? He can get a second job if he can't give up on his desire. That would really pay the minimum wage. Out of the box. He still works throughout the day, and I can't tolerate that he doesn't get paid for it. As a result, he is unable to obtain a second job since he is required to see clients before and beyond normal working hours. His lovely automobile is on the list of cars that cannot be utilized as Uber vehicles, thus he is unable to become an Uber driver. As for stealing my car, screw him. I truly don't like his ridiculous automobile. His lack of financial awareness is demonstrated by the fact that he didn't even spend his money sensibly when he had it, and then butt-fucked him. Did I also mention that he hasn't registered or paid the taxes since he doesn't have the money? I'm not sure who will have to pay the ticket, but I'm confident it won't be me. There have been several changes since my previous post. I think I'll go through it in order, because that's how I'm functioning right now, moment by moment. After publishing that post, I decided to cut him off for good. I tossed away all the things I'd ever given him, changed the Wi-Fi password. I have frozen the credit card I provided him. I also attempted to cancel our joint account. For those of you who know what a con is, we were planning to attend a nerd gathering in Atlanta around Labor Day. I had intended to pay for both of us over a year ago. I informed him that he couldn't travel unless he paid $600 for his trip and hotel. I still don't understand why I did this instead of telling him he was crazy for thinking he could travel. I know I should not have played games, but I'm pleased I did since he promised to pay me $1,000 by the end of August. In writing, we also have control over our words. I was astonished. All of a sudden he has enough money for a weekend of parties and a chance to win me back. I stated I'd use it for the August bills. After that, he could begin paying off the remaining $25,000 he owed me for assisting him last year. Only then could he treat himself to lovely things like out-of-state travel. This was sent over SMS, and he never responded. That night he slept on the couch again. It was Friday. Saturday morning at 9 a.m., he left my residence with his dog and everything he owned. I stored everything he had as well as his dog's belongings under his desk. I also removed any photos of him that were lying about the house. Other than Facebook and messaging, I banned him everywhere else. I looked at 2 rental properties and fell in love with one of them and its owner. That following day, I made a deposit, took my dog on numerous walks and a long trip to the dog park, and celebrated with my next-door neighbor and her partner while sipping wine and eating Twizzlers. That night, ex-BF never returned. On Sunday, I spent the entire day working on cosplays and outfits for the event, while also having fun with my dog and neighbor. It was wonderful. When I expected this flood of grief and remorse to strike, it never happened. After 24 hours away, his name was no longer on the lease. He had 24 hours to come retrieve his belongings after I texted him that his claim to residence had been revoked. He stated he'd be there that night. I mentioned 24 hours notice. He agreed on Monday night. On Monday, he brings his belongings home in his father's vehicle and returns the key to me. He added "Say Something" by A Great Big World to our shared YouTube playlist many hours after he departed. Sarah Bareilles' song and Drake's song have now been added. Then the next morning, he lost access to the music. Yay for middle school communication styles. Wednesday, his closest friend texted me as if nothing was wrong. Thursday, I texted my ex to inquire when his check would arrive. He doesn't respond. I emailed him on Friday morning. I haven't heard from him since then, as far as I know. The next day, I write him one more email, which basically says the same thing, and he invites me to coffee on Sunday night. We had coffee together. He never mentions paying money back, but when we discussed our feelings, we both agreed. Betrayed, left behind, and wounded. Not trusting the other person. If I believed in us, I would not want to be paid back, so he assumed I was lying when I stated I was willing to support him. He also believed I was loaning him money under the guise of love, setting him up for failure. Because I took his money, I knew he felt exploited in the same way I did. That's when I realized I'd finished. I felt a weight fall onto my tummy. I gave him time to finish. Then we parted ways. When he asked to contact me, I said that I needed a break. The next day, I emailed him about the $1,000 he promised to give me, explaining that we had never discussed needing to repay it. He did not respond for several days, but on the day I was leaving for the conference, he did. He replied the money was on the way. That's fine, it can linger in my mailbox for 5 days while I'm away. His buddies knew we were going through a difficult period, Yet they were still able to find him on Tinder and OKC. I had a terrific time at the conference, but when I returned home, the check was in an envelope that had not been addressed or shipped. The following time I owed him money. I paid it off and told him what a jerk he was for using letter mail instead of breaking into my house knowing I wouldn't be there. He made me wonder whether he was seeking for the spare key I'd given to the dog sitter. So frightening. He replied to the email with a mushy, "I love you and I know I messed up" statements, implying that he is too polite and unable to say no, and that his desire to assist others causes him to forget about himself. It was the funniest explanation ever. It was too simple for me to absorb all of your money and energy since I was so polite and helpful. Sorry. I told them, "You broke my heart and my bank account, they won't be mended for a long time, and I hope I won't be dumb enough to trust you with them again until then. If you have any payment-related correspondence, I will respond. Otherwise, best of luck with everything." He said, "I would take back everything I did if I could name I adore you. From the depths of my heart. I could have prevented everything. I could have done something. But I let you leave. That will be among the worst things I ever do. I really apologize for making you feel awful. I want you to be happy. That's all I've ever desired." I relocated from the house we were living in to another that was identical but a few blocks away. Moving kept me so busy that I didn't have time to think about it. All of our previous belongings, photographs, and garbage were discarded, so everything in the new apartment is mine. It's just me. After a time, I still feel like it hasn't dawned on me that it's finished. I thought I was going to get crushed. And I felt lonely at moments throughout the party, which made me want to smoke, but instead I felt humiliated. I don't even want to look at his Instagram, because seeing a photo of him reminds me how naive I was to believe he was the one. As a result, I no longer place much faith in my own thinking. I knew we'd be together a long time when I first met him. I knew I wanted to spend the rest of my life with him. It resembled my name. I have amazing conversations with gorgeous individuals and see cute people, but I don't desire anything else since I don't believe my ideas enough to act on them. They lost me so severely the first time. But I suppose that's it. Life continues now that it's finished. Comment where commenter 1 has already remarked, "Op. I recall viewing your initial post and wondering what would happen. You handled it wonderfully, and it's evident that removing him from your life is beneficial to your mental and emotional health. You simply sound better when you write. That makes me very pleased for you. Never stop moving your feet. Thank you for the grin. I find it amazing how quickly he became a stranger in front of my eyes. Anyhow, the gathering was a nice way to restart the single bitch thing. Haha. I'm going to remain on that road for a while,